The sky above Earth's capital shimmered as the Grantor ship appeared in low orbit. It was not a peaceful arrival. The alien cruiser roared like thunder, gold and black panels gleaming as it hovered above the Earth Alliance headquarters. Civilians stopped and stared, some in fear, others in awe. This was not a visit, it was a statement inside the ship. Ambassador Varelli of the Grantor Empire stood tall and proud. Her blue and silver robes sparkled, and her 4 eyes scanned everything. With cold judgment, she walked like she owned the ground beneath her feet. Behind her marched 6 armored guards, armed and expressionless. Varelli smiled as she stepped out of the ship and touched human soil. She didn't bow, didn't greet anyone, she just walked straight through the welcoming committee like they didn't exist. Earth's delegates waited near the Alliance Hall, but none dared speak first. Jace Mercer stood at the back, watching quietly. He wasn't in a suit or fancy uniform, just a plain black jacket. But his eyes missed nothing. Varelli entered the great hall, glanced around, and wrinkled her nose. "This is where the humans conduct their business?" she said loudly, her voice echoing. One human ambassador cleared his throat and tried to welcome her politely, but she stepped right past him. Ignoring his outstretched hand, "No need for small talk," she said. "Give me the resources your Planet O's." Whispers filled the room. Some alien leaders shifted in discomfort. Others watched silently. One even smiled. He knew the Grantor were known for arrogance. But even for them, this was bold. Varelli sat in the center chair. Worth's chair without asking. She looked down at the humans as if they were students. "You joined the Galactic Alliance late," she said. "You bring nothing but noise and dirt." No one responded. Not yet. They were trained to stay calm even when insulted. But Jace didn't move. He kept standing with arms folded, staring at her like a man measuring weight, not beauty. When Varelli noticed him, she tilted her head. "And what are you supposed to be?" she asked with a mocking grin. "Security." "Do you carry a stick, little human?" Jace finally stepped forward. He didn't shout, didn't threaten. He just spoke in a low voice that made the hall go quiet. "You are on Earth," he said. "Act like a guest." Varelli laughed, sharp and cruel. "I am an ambassador," she said. "I do not take orders from primitives." She stood, walked to the Earth flag standing near the podium, and touched it with one claw. Then she dragged her nail down the fabric. Tearing it, gasps echoed through the room. The human delegates froze, unsure what would happen next. Jace walked up to her slowly. No weapons, no anger in his eyes, just steady control. "You will apologize," he said, calmly, to the flag. "Into this planet," Varelli smirked. "What will you do if I don't?" Her guards moved forward but stopped when they saw Jace's eyes. It's not rage, something worse. Cold, quiet promise, with a small motion. Jace tapped the side of his ear suddenly. Hidden doors slid open, and human soldiers stepped in silent. Armored and armed. They didn't shout. They didn't aim. They just stood like statues, waiting. One alien diplomat muttered, "Oh no." They activated Black Watch. Varelli blinked, finally unsure. "You dare threaten a Grantor envoy?" she whispered. "No," Jay said. "I'm reminding you where you are. You're not above the rules here." He stepped even closer. Now, just a foot away from her, Earth was silent for a long time. He said, "We learned to watch, to prepare, to survive. We lost people, cities, and hope. But we rebuilt, and we will never kneel again." Varelli stared into his eyes and saw no fear for the first time. She realized she wasn't speaking to weak diplomats. She was speaking to someone who had seen war, who had won it, the silence. In the room was heavy then. Slowly, Varelli stepped back. She didn't apologize. But she didn't speak again either. She returned to her seat, this time not Earth's chair, but one beside it. And she said nothing for the rest of the meeting. The tension eased slightly. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. The Grantor thought they were above Earth, but one man had shown them that Earth remembers everything, and Earth never forgets an insult. Not anymore, asterisk. The next morning, clouds covered the city. But inside the Earth Alliance building, things were heavier than weather. The silence from last night still hung in the air, thick like smoke. Varelli hadn't spoken since the flag incident. She was used to fear, respect, even worship, but not silence. She sat at the edge of the long table. Surrounded by leaders from 12 different species, most of them shifted in their seats when her eyes passed over them, but Jace, he wasn't even there. Not until the door opened. His boots made no sound on the floor. He wore the same black coat, no medals, no shining armor. Only the quiet confidence of a man who didn't need to prove anything. He didn't bow. He didn't sit. He stood near the projector at the front and looked at no one until he looked at her. "Before we begin," he said, his voice calm, "there is something that must be clear." Varelli raised an eyebrow, trying to smile. "Are you here to apologize for your outburst?" she asked, voice dripping with fake kindness. Jace turned to her slowly, and then he said 5 words that stopped the entire room. "No one disrespects Earth here." It wasn't loud, but it cut like a knife. The delegates all froze, even the ones from powerful empires, because those 5 words didn't sound like a threat. They sounded like law. Varelli opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out. Something about his voice, it wasn't angry. It wasn't proud. It was like cold. Steel pressed gently to the throat. "Not yet cutting, but ready. You came here demanding resources," Jace continued. "You spat on our flag, insulted our people, and sat in a seat that wasn't yours." He stepped forward once, just enough to close the space between words and action. "Some think this is politics," he said, "but on Earth, respect is not a request, it's earned." Varelli stood up, trying to match his presence. "I represent the Grantor Empire," she said sharply. "We ruled space long before humans even learned fire." "And yet," Jace replied, "you still need Earth's minerals, our tech upgrades, and our transport lanes. You may rule the stars, but you've come here asking for help. Don't pretend it's not what it is." The room was silent again, but this time with tension on her side. One of the delegates, a Zernathi noble, slowly nodded in agreement. "Allurs?" Another, an elder from the Kalara, whispered something to his assistant, watching Jace with interest. Varelli felt it, the shift, the tide was turning. She wouldn't back down. Not yet, if Earth thinks it can rise through insults and fear. She said, "Then you are no better than the warlords we destroyed." Jace didn't flinch. He tapped a few buttons on the panel beside him. A large screen came to life, showing footage, old, raw, and terrifying. Explosions in deep space, hundreds of Grantor ships burning, a single black human warship moving through the battlefield like a ghost. Silent, deadly, unstoppable, the room gasped. This was not public footage. This was classified. Varelli's eyes widened. She remembered that battle. It had ended the last war expansion her empire had started. They had called the ship Phantom 9, and its captain had never been identified. Jace turned back to the table. "I was there," he said. "I watched your fleets try to erase us. I buried friends, civilians, and allies. And then I took command." "You are not the first to try us," he said softly. "And if you forget who we are, we will remind you again." No one clapped, no one cheered. But there was no more laughter, no more arrogance. Even Varelli stood still, her throat dry. She finally understood. This wasn't a wild earthling challenging her. This was a soldier of silence, a shadow of vengeance. This was the reason the stars had grown quiet after Earth's return to the galactic stage. She sat down slowly, without a word. Her guards exchanged nervous glances. Unsure if they were still in control, Jace gave one final glance across the table. "I don't need a crown," he said. "I don't need permission, but if you wish to work with Earth, you will offer respect." And with that, he turned and walked out. No need to stay. He'd already spoken louder than any army ever could. The rain had started falling gently outside the Earth's Alliance base, but inside, the silence was heavy and cold. Varelli stayed in her private chamber, staring at a blank screen. She had insulted humans, torn their flag, and been silenced by one man, and yet no one punished her. No one threatened her with weapons. Only words and one old memory. She couldn't forget the footage, that black warship, silent as death, moving through space like a shadow with teeth. And the voice of the human who commanded it, It was Jace. Now she knew the truth. He wasn't just a soldier. He was the soldier, the one the galaxy still whispered about. She tried to shake off the feeling. Grunter, don't fear humans, she told herself. We conquered worlds before they had cities, but the more she repeated it, the less she believed it. A soft chime broke her thoughts, an invitation from Earth Command. It wasn't a demand, but somehow it felt like one. They wanted her to visit a restricted zone near orbit. She hesitated, then accepted. Curiosity burning stronger than pride, a shuttle picked her up silently. Piloted by an AI, no escort, no guards, just her and Jace. Waiting inside, arms crossed, he nodded once, saying nothing. The trip to the orbital platform was fast, too fast. When the shuttle docked, they entered a black corridor with glowing white lights along the floor. No windows, no names, no welcoming banners. Only thick silence and a low hum. Jace led the way. Like a shadow walking through another shadow. At the end of the hall was a single steel door. Jace stopped in front of it. This is Vault 7, he said. Earth keeps its silence here. Varelli looked at him, unsure if he was joking. What's inside? She asked. He turned and stared straight into her. The reason no one has dared attack Earth in the last 20 years? The door opened with a soft hiss. Inside was a large viewing chamber, completely dark except for one thing. Floating in the center of the chamber was a ship. Not docked, not moving, just suspended in gravity. It was huge, more massive than anything in her empire. Black, silent, and shaped like a spear. It had no lights, no name. Only a symbol on the side of burning world with human eyes. Varelli stepped closer to the glass, feeling something in her chest. Not fear, but something close. It was respect born from instinct. This ship was never launched, Jace said, his voice low. It was built as a message, not a weapon, but make no mistake, he added. It works. Varelli turned slowly. Why build such a thing and never use it? Jace looked at her for a long time before answering, because true power is knowing you can end the war. And choosing not to, the lights shifted slightly. And she saw the ship had no crew windows, no bridge, no signs of weakness. It was built for AI command only. No humans would die if it went to battle. Only the enemy. Why show me this? She asked finally. Jace's face was unreadable. Because your empire thinks Earth is still desperate to please the stars. Because you still treat us like beggars in a fancy room. And because you need to understand, we are not asking to be heard. We are warning you to listen. Varelli felt her hands tremble slightly. Not from fear of the ship, but from what it meant. Earth had prepared in silence, while the rest of the galaxy played politics. The humans had built monsters in the dark. I used to believe Earth was nothing but noise, she whispered. And now? Jace asked, stepping beside her. She stared at the warship one last time. Now I see the silence was the loudest thing of all. They left the vault without another word. The ship stayed behind, unmoving, but its presence clung to her skin. Like cold air, back on the shuttle, Varelli didn't speak for the whole trip. She didn't try to insult, didn't smirk. Something in her had changed. Not completely, but the seeds of humility had been planted. And Jace. He didn't smile, didn't boast. He just stared into space like a man who'd seen too much. And knew what waited in the stars? Varelli stood at the edge of the Earth Council platform. Her forefingers tapped the metal rail slowly, one after another. The quiet hall behind her echoed with voices, alien delegates talking, whispering, doubting. Since yesterday's visit to Vault 7, her mind hadn't stopped spinning. That ship, that thing, it didn't belong to any council, any treaty, or even logic. It was proof that Earth had gone far beyond simple survival. They were ready to win any war without asking permission. But pride ground her. Pride was not easy to silence. And she had lived her entire life under the shadow of that pride. She wasn't ready to bend, not fully, not yet. She returned to the meeting chamber that afternoon, wearing her finest ceremonial armor. Each panel told the story of a victory her family had won. She looked like a queen. And the hall noticed. Jace entered late, as always, still in black, still quiet, still unreadable. He didn't care for grand entrances, but every time he entered, the room changed. Varelli waited until all the voices calmed. Then she stood, tall and proud. "I called this meeting under official protest," she announced. "I demand that the Earth Alliance hand over full specs of Vault 7's project to the Galactic Oversight." Gasps broke the room's quiet. Delegates looked around nervously, some at her. Most at Jace. He didn't blink, didn't move. He just sat and watched. "That ship is illegal," she continued. "It violates 23 peace regulations. No species may build without transparency. No weapon may hide in silence. No force may threaten the Council's balance." Then she looked straight at him. "And Earth has broken all three." Still no answer. Still that haunting silence. Jace stood slowly, walked to the center of the hall, and this time when he spoke, his voice was colder than space itself. "You dare accuse Earth of imbalance?" he said. "When your empire builds mind control, satellites above refugee worlds." Varelli's eyes narrowed. "You have no proof," she replied, but her tone was weaker, her voice unsteady. Jace didn't argue. He didn't show recordings, didn't throw papers. He just raised one hand. And the room darkened. A hologram shimmered into life footage from deep orbit. It showed Grantor technicians installing strange devices above a ruined colony. The colony had no army, no ships. It's only survivors and children, and the satellites pulsed with green waves that changed thoughts, crushed will, and made people submit. The delegates went silent. Even Varelli froze. Because she knew this footage was real, Jace turned to her one last time. "We didn't show this," he said. "We erased it, buried it, never shared it with the Council." "Why?" he asked, stepping closer. "Because we believed in giving your empire a chance to change. But now?" He leaned in, voice sharp like glass. "You stand here, in our home, and demand we be punished. You dare to challenge the very hand that showed mercy." Varelli's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Jace spoke again, quiet but dangerous. "I warned you," he said, "in your language and ours, and in silence. Do not test Earth." The weight of those words pulled the air from the room. No alarms, no soldiers. Just one voice and 1,000 years of rage behind it. Varelli sat down slowly. The shine of her armor no longer mattered. Her empire might not listen, but she had heard the warning. And this time she would remember it. Jace gave one last glance across the chamber. To every species watching, waiting, judging, "I do not want war," he said, "but if it comes, Earth will not blink." And with that, he turned away. The hall behind him stayed frozen, not out of fear, but out of realization. They were not the center of power anymore. Not when humans had already learned to build in silence. Not when one man could shake the stars without raising his voice. The council building stood quiet that evening. Its lights dimmed, guards posted silently at each gate, but inside one window, a different kind of battle was happening. Varelli stood alone in her guest chamber, armor removed, cloak folded on a chair. For the first time in her career, she wasn't preparing for war or making demands. She was thinking. She stared at a small screen on the wall. It showed Earth City's children laughing, people building, planting, helping each other. No weapons, no soldiers, just life. Real, honest, messy life. And for some reason, that image shook her more than the black warship ever did. She had always believed in power, power through fear, control, strength. But Earth's power was different. It was quiet, patient, and deeply human. The next morning, Varelli arrived early. To the council floor, no guards, no armor, no smirk on her lips. Just a simple robe with her family crest faded from time. She didn't take Earth's chair. She sat in her own this time. By choice, Jace entered minutes later, carrying nothing, wearing the same black coat. Their eyes met. But he didn't nod. He simply sat across from her and waited. Other alien. Delegates arrived one by one. There was tension, still, but something had changed. The eyes now drifted to Jace. Not out of fear, but respect, and strangely. Some now looked at Varelli with curiosity. She wasn't acting like before. She wasn't shouting. The chairman asked if any party had final remarks before the vote on Earth's defense rights. Varelli stood up slowly, and the room went quiet. Everyone expected one last insult, one final threat, but she shocked them all. "I came here with pride," she said, her voice softer than ever. "I believed humans were beneath us. I believed Earth was only a planet that begged for place at our table." She looked down for a moment, then back up. "But I was wrong." Gasps echoed softly. Jace didn't move, but his fingers stopped tapping the table. Varelli continued, her tone honest, raw. "Earth doesn't need to ask for a seat." She said they built their own table. "They suffered," she said. "And they rose without asking the galaxy for help. They bled, rebuilt, and now they guard not only themselves, but others who were abandoned." She looked toward Jace now, not with anger, but something close to admiration. "They didn't threaten me," she said. "They warned me. And I'm glad they did." There was silence, then whispers. Then something unexpected, light applause. Not much, but enough to shift the air. Varelli sat down quietly, her shoulders lighter. Not weak, just no longer pretending to be untouchable. After the meeting, Jace found her standing by the window again, watching Earth from orbit, the stars reflected in the glass-like eyes watching. "History change? You surprised me," Jace said calmly. She smiled gently, not mocking this time. "I surprised myself." Jace leaned beside her, looking down at the planet. "Why the change?" he asked. Varelli didn't answer right away. "Then," she said, "because I saw your strength wasn't in ships or guns, it was in how you carry your pain." He nodded slowly. "Pain is a good teacher," he said. "If you survive it." They stood in silence for a moment. Then she asked something strange. "You think the stars will ever see Earth the way I saw it today?" Jace didn't smile, but his voice softened. "They will," he said, "when they stop looking down." And with that, the old wall between them finally cracked. Not with war, not with victory, but with understanding. Asterisk, the night before the Earth treaty vote. A shadow moved through the outer city. Clouds covered the moon, and the stars were lost behind a layer of smoke. Dark ship, without a flag, slipped into the lower atmosphere. No authorization, no ID, no warning. Inside the Earth Council compound, alarms began flashing red. The guards were too slow before anyone could react. Masked attackers stormed through the back corridor. Their target wasn't the council, it was Varelli. They dragged her from her chamber, gagged her, and stunned her guards. It happened in less than 60 seconds. By the time Earth security responded, her room was empty. Only a broken chair and the scent of alien gas remained. In the command room, Jace read the message left on the wall. "This is what happens when you kneel to humans." He didn't speak, didn't blink. But those around him knew. Something inside him had turned to fire. Within minutes, Earth drones found the attackers' trail. They were taking Varelli to an abandoned zone outside the shielded district, a wasteland from an old war, still poisoned by old tech and unguarded. Jace didn't call a team. He went alone. He moved like smoke, his black coat flapping behind him as the dust rose around his boots. He found them in a crumbling tower, 8 masked beings, armed and laughing. Varelli was tied to a metal post. Bruised, one eye swollen shut, her armor was gone, replaced with chains. But her eyes still burned with fire. One attacker lifted a weapon to her head. "We'll tell the galaxy Earth let this happen," he snarled. "Let them all see the price of weakness." Jace's voice rang out from the shadows like a blade. "No," he said. "They'll see what happens. When you touch a guest on my planet." The attackers spun around, but it was too late. Jace was already there. His hands moved faster than their eyes. 3 dropped before they even fired. One tried to flee. Jace tackled him and shattered his weapon with a single blow. Another raised a blade. Jace dodged it, struck once, and the attacker hit the wall unconscious. In less than 30 seconds, it was over. Jace walked to Varelli and knelt beside her. Her face was bloody, but she still looked at him with defiance. "You came," she whispered, barely audible. "Of course I did," he said softly. "You're under our sky." She laughed once, then winced in pain. He cut her chains gently, lifted her in his arms like she weighed nothing as they exited the ruined tower. She looked at the Earth sky again. This time, it didn't seem cold. It seemed like home, in the medical bay, as her wounds were cleaned. Jace stood at the doorway, watching quietly. He didn't speak, just waited. When she was able to sit up, she looked at him. Her voice raspy but firm. "My own people sent them," she said. He didn't ask how she knew he already had. "They wanted to punish me for respecting you." She added, for changing. Jace walked in and sat beside her bed. He didn't speak of war or politics. Instead, he said something simple. "Change is dangerous," he said, "but it's the only thing that keeps us alive." Varelli turned her head to him, eyes softer than ever. "Why save me?" she asked. "Even after everything I said, everything I did." Jace looked down at his hands. Then at her. "Because you asked a question no one else ever did," he said. "You asked who we really were, and then you listened." The words hit her harder than the chains ever did. For the first time, someone saw her not as a title, not as a threat, but as someone worth saving. She reached out and touched his arm gently. A small gesture, no politics, no pride, just human, just connection. 3 cycles passed since the night of the attack. The scars on Varelli's face had healed, but something deeper had changed inside her. She no longer walked like a conqueror. She walked like someone who had learned. The final vote was ready. 12 galactic species had gathered in Earth's Grand Hall. This time, there was no tension in the air. Only curiosity, quiet respect, and the sense that something new was being born. Varelli entered through the side gate, not in armor, but in a plain white robe, no guards, no weapons, no throne. The Gronter crest on her chest was smaller now, humble. She walked past the other diplomats and stood in the middle of the chamber. Everyone waited, even Jace, standing off to the side, arms crossed. He watched but didn't interfere. This moment was hers. She looked up at the screen above the chamber. It displayed the treaty. Earth shall be recognized as an equal sovereign voice among the galactic powers. Then she spoke, voice steady. The Gronter Empire. Votes yes. Gasps rippled through the room, not in shock, but in realization. It was real. Varelli had broken generations of arrogance with a single word. One by one, the other empires followed. Even the cold-blooded Krayla rarely voted at all, said yes, and then, at last, Earth's flag rose next to the oldest symbols of the galaxy. Jace said nothing, but his hand curled into a tight fist at his side for just a second. Then he relaxed. After the session, Varelli stepped out into the Earth garden that sat behind. The hall, it was peaceful green trees, birds singing, wind brushing across her skin. She found Jace sitting under a tree, staring at the sky like it was an old friend. "You never say much," she said, approaching slowly. He looked at her, one brow raised. "You say enough for both of us," he replied calmly. That made her smile, but her eyes turned serious again. "I spoke to the Gronter Council this morning," she said. "They are not happy with me?" "I imagine not," Jace said. "They wanted me to remind you," she added, "that we are not equals." Jace looked away, then up at the sky again. "You're wrong," he said simply. She nodded slowly, then sat beside him in the grass. "I've lived my whole life believing power was about control," she said. "And now?" He asked. "Now I think real power is the choice to be kind even when you could destroy." She said something Earth seems to understand deeply. They sat in silence for a long time. Birds flew overhead, wind rustled the leaves, the sky began to glow orange with the coming sunset. Then she turned to him again. "You changed me," she said quietly. "No," Jace replied. "You changed yourself," she laughed. "Just a little. I used to think humans were dangerous because of their weapons," she said. "But now I see. It's their hearts that are even more dangerous. They fight to survive. But they also fight to protect people they shouldn't care about, like you," Jace said, without looking at her. She didn't answer, but her hand reached over and rested lightly on his. For the first time, Varelli wasn't an ambassador, or a conqueror, or a daughter of a war empire. She was just someone. sitting next to someone else, someone who had found hope where she expected only fear, someone who had been saved not by force but by humanity. That night, she returned to her people.
Us.
But she brought back more than just trade deals or technology. She brought back truth. She stood before the Grantor Council and said 7 words that would echo for generations. Earth is not beneath us, but beside and far away. On a quiet Earth hill, Jace stood alone, looking up at the stars, watching. As one of them changed its path, coming not to dominate, but to join,